poverty. And we changed laws, we had changes. And the problem is with this kind of thing is the energy disperses and then you have it at that level for a while, and you get to a point and you say, my God, we need to do so much more. That's how I feel right now. And I see nothing wrong with any of the issues that we're talking about, and I say but, I shouldn't even have a but. I am so upset right now in my life, seeing what's going on in our country and the world, about the division of resources that are so unevenly divided. And that, I came here, that is a focus I want. However else we get along with each other, we have to be working on that. But we have to have like a center focus. And to me, the focus is only get the money out of politics, get the money out of government. We're being bought and sold. And regardless of who we are and how we relate to each other and everything, we've got to have this one thing. We want to stop what's happening. It's just like nobody's going to get their other issues done unless we stop having corporations as persons, and that we stop letting all this money buy our politicians. And that doesn't have anything to do with anything else. It's just, for me, that's what this is about. And I want to work on all of the issues we talked about. But if we don't change that in our country, and it's the biggest thing ever, then, forget it. It's just going to keep, we're going to be a third world country. There's no question in my mind. It's devastating for me to watch that.
And then I just want to say, I feel like this conversation could go on forever, and I totally see your hand, but after Leah talks, I want to do a little bit of beginning to wrap up, and if the folks want to stay and respond to things and talk more, but I want to make sure we respect people's time and people are able to leave at a coherent moment if they want to.
I can pass. We can go to that. That's fine.
Okay, so to wrap up, I just want to throw out there that a lot of really brilliant, amazing, concrete ideas have been thrown out during this conversation, and in order to allow this conversation to continue in different ways, if people feel like they want to stay or if they don't, but to give people a chance to leave, are folks interested in it all in some people or lots of people coming up with a concrete plan of how to share these ideas or keep generating these ideas? Or there was talk of an anti-racist committee and an outreach committee that worked collaboratively. So there's lots of real tangible things, and could we just spend a minute as a group figuring out what follow-up on these really amazingly brilliant ideas that this group of people just came up with together? Does anybody have any thoughts about that? And then we can go back to these other kinds of conversations, Leah, and then...
I just want to say I really like I feel like that's outreach and anti-racist, or whatever the working group people call it, is happening in a lot of places, and it's really exciting to me. And there's also people of color caucuses, which I think is really great, and sometimes they're multiracial anti-racist groups. And I just wanted to say there's a bunch of people who aren't here that are also interested in that are folks of color who haven't felt super welcome, and we have an email list and have been generating ideas. And I think one thing we could do is try and figure out a larger meeting that those folks can come and be at to plan what kind of work they would want to do with that as well. And so having a discussion in this space around maybe it being starting out here's 2 teams and getting all the folks we can think of who might want to come, and then organizing it there, but some kind of longer actual planning meeting. I would be super into helping with that. I'd be really excited about it. And so just as a possible next step.
I also heard a lot of people talking about education, and want to just propose that we think a little bit more concretely about what that could look like in that space, and whether that means people bring articles about the history of struggle or history of racism and capitalism, or how we've gotten to a place what you're talking about where the politicians have been fist bought out, but how to make popular and political education very, very much a part of the fabric of this. I don't know if you have a direct response.
I have an idea, actually. I was actually speaking with him about this in the truck on the way over here. If we could narrow down information in a space enough to fit a business card, and we can have these printed and pass them out with just basic topics and an easy read for people to kind of look at and understand what's going on and how they can benefit by being part of the movement. I think that would be something great that we can do. So if there's a group that can put something together that will fit on a business card, that we all can carry a few, hand them out, or leave them at places. This will sum up our movement, or at least draw interest. And that's one way that we can educate very easily.
Is you and the suspenders and Elizabeth and Margarita?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for holding this little session. It's been rewarding. And on the subject of outreach, there's a committee. You know anyone, like a point person in this outreach committee? No.
I do.
Does somebody?
I do, but I know somebody, but I'm not in it.
There might even be some funds available for printing up business cards.
That'd be great.
Would it?
Let's talk about it. Because I could make some on my own, but if we had something standard that if anybody went out of their way and went to a print shop and printed some, was able to hand them out, because I know that a lot of people have donated resources and money and things to this movement, and that's just another way. There's a print shop in Mesa close to where I live on Longmore and Southern. They print 500 business cards for $18, black and white. So it's something real cheap and real easy that everybody could afford, or most people could afford. So if we could have something uniform that we all can have, and it can be the same thing, that's coherent enough that we all agree upon, it would be very positive.
I have Elizabeth and then Margarita.
What I was going to say is, yes, this discussion is probably not necessarily happening in the outreach committee, and it probably needs to be brought to the attention of the outreach committee. I know some people, but I wasn't necessarily here for the whole discussion. I know Joe Murphy's on the outreach committee. I could transmit a message. I would also say, though, to the thing about having one single message, that we can also have many different messages, and they could be targeted to different audiences. Because some messages read different to other people. Some messages will read one way to one person and one way to another person, and even though I think that people have an assumption that we're all here for the same reason, to me, I hope that we don't reduce it down to one thing, because to me, it's not necessarily the money in politics. Whatever, it's about the prison system. It could be a lot of different issues, that bring us here. There's a lot of issues that sustain the inequality, and so, I would think that it is good to have one universal one, and if we come up with something that really got a kernel of what this sort of group generated, that would be good. We could also think about multiple ones, but also start talking with the people who might have access to resources.